String, stance. String, stance.
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Guys, I have been on the record over 10 times on this channel being like, I do not care about Bob. He's fat. If there is two things on this planet that I cannot stand, it is smelly bitches and fat bitches. I have never been a fan of Bob's playstyle. To me, he is truly the first slop character that Tekken ever created outside of like the reskins of characters like old Kunamitsu for the most part and Miharu Hirano or whatever her name is, where they are literal clones of an already existing character just for the sake of saying you have more characters in your game. I think taking something as interesting as the Mishima playstyle, giving it training wheels and then putting it onto a fat American is one of the lamest and corniest things that I have ever seen in my entire life, and I have been subjected to at least 3 Taylor Swift worshippers in my lifetime. Bob to me has always been this character I just kinda ignored. In Tekken 7 I labbed him so I would stop dying to the cornball flowcharts these dudes used to spam with him in that game, and then I moved on with my life, bro. To me, Bob, I just don't care. His whole gimmick of being a fat guy who doesn't move like he's fat stinks worse than a polyamorous aerobics class and becomes incredibly annoying after exactly 15 seconds, which is about the amount of time it takes for a Victor player to look down at his controller and click a button. We all know that Leo is like an archaeologist or whatever, but he's not going outside and being like, oh, archaeology is awesome. And like, we know Nina is an assassin, but Nina isn't like, ooh, I'm secretive, look at me, Solid Snake. But with Bob, there's a whole lot of him doing backflips and then just being like, oh, my big old belly. Like he just fucking vored Ling, bro. And it just gets cringe. The gimmick in of itself isn't that bad. It is just how forced it has become on Bob. However, this trailer is pretty fucking sick. I think that Bob looks pretty fucking sick, which is something I never thought I would have heard myself say ever. His movements look more fluid and smooth, his animations are cool, I like his new design, and I like that he shares the same voice actor as 2 of my favorite anime characters. I think his heat looks sick, and I also like that this is actually a fucking Tekken character. I know in this trailer we get to see a lot of Tekken 8 bullshit as we always do, but Bob hasn't got any weapons. Bob is not my eyes with flashbangs every 5 seconds. It is just straight hands, even if it is in a very exaggerated way, but that is what Tekken is supposed to be, at least to me. Bob's Rager also has to be one of the best in the game, but not only that, they played Electric Fountain in his trailer, which automatically makes him a peak character. I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. I'm going to play Bob. This is the first time in my entire time playing Tekken games that Bob has actually been a clean character to me. I think Bob looks sick. Michael Murray, you have actually showed up to work. Who would have thought it? But now, we have talked about what I like about Bob briefly, because this is still Tekken 8, but as always with these Tekken 8 characters, there's always a lot to dislike, but I want to say this again. Almost everything that I am going to list about Bob that I don't like is almost entirely issues related to how Tekken 8 functions and not necessarily anything to do with the character. So for example, his power crush, like always in these trailers, they emphasize the character's power crush. Do I think that every character in the game having a viable armor option is cringe? Yes, but at the same time, you do need one to be able to play Tekken 8 and be viable. That is a Tekken 8 problem, not a Bob problem. So let's get into it. Pretty early on in this trailer, I can see you guys clicking the subscribe button within 0.1 seconds. Guys, if you like the video, if you like Tekken content, remember to like, comment and subscribe, all that good shit. I'm not gonna take up any more of your time. Oh my god, I couldn't get out a sentence. Just subscribe to the channel, bro. Let's get into it. Pretty early on in this trailer, we see Victor do down forward 2. I think that's the move, right? You know, that cringe launcher that they always spam because Victor players have brain damage. But I think that move is like minus 13. We see Bob punish that and go into an immediate stance 50-50. Now, if you guys have been watching the channel for long enough, you should know that I despise every single character in the game who has something like this. Even my character, Armor King, has something like this in back 1-2. And the only reason I haven't complained about it in a video yet is because I still punish everything with 2-1, despite being a God of Destruction player. What I will say though, is that I am glad they stopped giving out the 10 frame stance transitions like what they had on Arlissa and Azucena, because those are genuinely some of the stupidest punishes in the game. I hate these moves for the single fact that you get double reward for something that is so minimally committal, because you get the flat damage that you got off your initial punish, but then you are very likely getting additional damage from the vortex you are about to put your opponent in. I think that these I-13 punishes are a little less jarring because clicking a minus 13 move I would say is on the higher end of committal, but I still do think it is extremely cringe. I've said so many times that it is so easy to fix Tekken 8 simply by removing the abundance of plus frames in every single character's kit, yet they have just given Bob another one of these cringe moves. I don't think that I can keep saying this because they just keep putting them onto new characters and they barely ever nerf these moves. It's clearly how they're designing characters, even when it's so streamlined and basic and easy and just overall shit gameplay design. And this kind of ties into the fact that Bob is yet another stance slop character, and I will say this. The Tekken team, despite making every single new character stance slop, has done a fairly decent job at the very least of toning down the power level with these stances somewhat, even if they are still slop. So when I see that Bob is another character with a homing option out of his stance, I'm just like, alright. It probably doesn't even do anything, even though it's cringe and streamlined gameplay with zero complex or even fun counterplay. It's really just more of the same shit. And like, it's gonna sound like I'm harping on, and I don't want to go into this too much because I think Bob's design has always been like this to a degree, but the amount of crushing moves in this trailer is truly diabolical, and not even just regular crushing moves, like wall splatting moves that crush. Like, I am going to take half your life for daring to click a button. Bro, look at this shit. This fat bastard could crush a bullet from Deadshot, bro. This guy could crush child support payments. What am I even looking at? I could go on, but it's really just the same old complaints, boys, and it's really just time to accept that this is what they want the game to be, even though every patch they're like, we're slowly working on improving the game to a state where everyone likes it. Stop putting plus frame moves in the fucking game. You don't need plus on block moves to play Tekken. You don't. You should not get rewarded for doing nothing, bro. This ain't rocket science. You're making characters that are actively going against what everyone wants and then being like, we're slowly improving the game to a state where people, and now they have to undo what they've done on a new character in a future patch because they released them with a retarded design. It's actually so brain dead observing this dev team, bro. Like, I'm looking at these stances, right? And I know I've stated that the stances are slop, but as a Tekken dev, when you are creating these stances, are you really going like, okay, we want players to step this stance to the right, fair. So, like, we're going to make all options steppable to the right, but we will have like a little poke that also tracks to the left. So, like, players can like check the opponent, okay? Fine. Now, does this stance have a slowish high homing move to completely stop stepping altogether and eradicate any kind of interesting counterplay to this stance? Okay, great. So now they've added that. But even still, it's not quite a 50-50 yet, because mashing and parry are options. So let's add a power crush so now they can't mash. But at the same time, we don't want the opponent to just sit there and take the mix because that's a boring viewing experience. No. We still want them to mash, even though we're already making it impossible for them to mash. Let's give this stance a slowish plus on block mid, which will give us a real 50-50 and does chip damage, so your opponent can't really just sit there and block. When you go character by character in this game, They all have a stance like this, which is why I say everyone plays the same. Like, how can you have a human being in the office creating these things when they're just copying and pasting the design onto every stance? The only difference is the fucking animations, bro. How do you have a human reviewing this shit? It's literally like they have a checklist of things that they must cram into everyone. Like, whatever, man. You guys have all probably thought about this already. Complaining about stances in Tekken 8 is so redundant at this point. Bob is not going to be the exception. What I do want to think about though is potentially how good Bob will actually be, like, competitively. And judging by this trailer, I think it's safe to say that Bob is going to be pretty fucking good. Tekken 8 is a game that doesn't really have bad characters because, like I said, it feels like everyone just has the same tools, just with like a little twist or something. And it's clear that Bob has all of the standard stance bullshit required to be a good character in this game. He's got good punishment, good whiff punishment. He's got those moves that guarantee heat engages, and it seems like his heat is crazy. Of course, from these trailers, it's very hard to see what a character's weaknesses could be, but let's be real. Tekken 8 characters don't have weaknesses unless you're Steve Fox, and in all seriousness, those weaknesses is just Asuka, and what's the other character? Asuka. So is that even really a weakness? I really just hope that Bob doesn't end up being broken like Kunimitsu, and I'm not even talking about the power level or anything. I just think that Kunimitsu is just a functionally broken character. There is something severely wrong with the tracking on that character, because stepping moves against Kunimitsu genuinely feels like RNG, depending on what character you're playing. Like, I understand a big body character like Armor King getting clipped by some of her better tracking moves, but I went on Twitter the other day and saw a clip of a dude getting clipped on Shaheen, but on Jin it was perfectly fine to step her. I don't know if I'm missing something, but she seems functionally broken, so I hope Bob is fine-tuned enough so that when he drops we don't have to deal with this kind of stuff. But anyways, as usual, I've complained, but I do like the way that Bob looks. He does look fun. I'm not going to be the guy who's like, you're not allowed to have fun on this game because the character functions like every other character, otherwise nobody would have fun. Even if the Kazuya players want to try and convince themselves that their character is different and that they're playing a different game. If you like the video, guys, remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that good shit. And until next time, guys.